this case, in a lot of ways, has been a reminder to me of how much I really do understand Thai culture, but of how much I've wanted to forget what I know about Thai culture. Northern Thailand, Laos. I do understand the way people think, feel, do business there. I understand some of the language issues that lurk behind cultural misunderstandings, because years of my life were taken up with, research and work in that part of the world. But in a lot of ways, it's stuff I don't want to think about. It's an understanding that I thought was part of my past. And, just today I was reflecting on why I feel so sad for Durian Rider, and for the very real possibility that the story ends with him in prison. And, I have to reflect on all this research I did back in the day. For years and years of my life, I really thought that prison activism was going to be a significant part of my career, my humanitarian work. Because, at one time, Buddhism was a, prime leading part of my identity. I was first and foremost a scholar of Theravada Buddhism, and then any interest I had in ecology or vegetarianism or veganism was secondary to that. This is back in the day. So I thought for a long time that I would be involved with programs to improve education inside prisons, just in being engaged with prison conditions. And I was interested in that and did research into that, and was, trying to get the first stages of a humanitarian involvement going when I was in Laos, when I was in Thailand, when I was in Cambodia, but also when I was in England, believe it or not. I was talking to people about prison charity, prison activism, etc. And, of course, when I was in Canada, when I was in Saskatchewan, involved with the Cree and Ojibwe there, I was really interested, short-term and long-term, about charity work, education work, etc., linked to the prison populations. So, none of that. It's not a repressed memory. It's just something I haven't thought about and I didn't want to think about, because in many ways it's a saddening reminder of my own lost potential and of things I wanted to do with my life that I now know I'm never going to be able to do. But really, as soon as I stopped being a Buddhist in any sense, as soon as I broke with the religion, I guess, my hopes for prison-related charity work ended with that also. But to give just, I remember one prison I actually visited in Laos, and I talked to the warden. I didn't say much. There was someone else there who spoke the language fluently, but, I didn't go inside that prison, but I still saw a fair bit of that prison. That was a prison with concrete walls. That was a pretty high-level prison by Laos standards. And I saw other prisons that had bamboo walls, where you could see through the walls. You saw inside the prison without having to go inside the prison. And nobody was trying to escape. Those prisoners, they could have punched their way through the wall, but they knew what the consequences would be. So nobody was trying to escape from those a couple prisons I saw. And when I was in Cambodia, I saw some prisons that were truly, truly third world. And, this is the other thing about humanitarian work. You spend more time wanting to do it than actually doing it. I very intentionally met and spoke with and had meetings with people who had done that type of research or done that type of activism or done that type of charity work. And so I learned things from talking to them. And, when you talk to people face to face, you notice there are some things they're comfortable telling you, and there's some things they're uncomfortable telling you, and there's some things they've seen inside the prisons that they're still traumatized by. You really, all those nuances come across. So, just today I was reflecting on this. On some level, I would feel happy if Durian Rider didn't have to go to prison, even though I do think that pushing forward with this case is the right thing to do, and it's what I have to do. Morally, it's obligatory. But it's a sad situation for me personally in many ways, including the reflecting I have to do on the Thai establishment, how the Thai legal system actually works, and what the attitudes are within the Thai establishment. Thailand, a lot of their institutions have borrowed the names of British institutions, and they seem to follow the format of British institutions. So they have a prosecution service that resembles, in England, what's called the Queen's Prosecution Service or the Crown Prosecution Service. I think these days people say Crown Prosecution Service rather than King's or Queen's, but it's used all those names historically. in some ways outwardly, even if you look at footage from or photographs from inside a Thai courtroom, it looks a lot like specifically the British model of how a legal system works. But then when you actually get involved in these ways, you're reminded of the deep and profound ways in which Thailand is culturally alien from any European country. And, it's not just procedural. A lot of it really is cultural. But it's important for us. I have a lot to say in this video, apart from the kind of bare facts of providing an update on the case. It's a very un-vegan term to use, but we have this idiom in English, boiling frog, a boiling frog scenario. All of us, even I myself, all of us lose sight of just how violent and vile and dangerous and hurtful and offensive Durian Ryder's conduct has been. We all get used to it. Even me, we hear it again and again. There are people who've been seeing this for years, and they start to treat it as if it's business as usual. And then, I talk to my lawyer, and the lawyer talks to the judge, and you get the reaction from the Thai establishment, and you're reminded, from an outsider's perspective, from anyone's objective perspective, but especially from a conservative member of the Thai establishment, from someone whose career has been in the law, whether they're a judge or a lawyer or a bureaucrat, someone who is really a conservative member of the establishment. They watch just one video from Durian Ryder. Like just the video he put up on September 1st. So this is very recent. I'm recording this today. What is this? This is September 9th? Yeah, today's September 9th. He put up a video recently, September 1st. That video alone can result in you doing hard time in Thailand. That one video. And in it, he restates many, accusations, many slanderous and defamatory and frankly threatening and harassing things he said against me in the past. And there really is a sense, both Durian Ryder's critics and his supporters have just become desensitized to this in a boiling frog scenario. And it was funny, but hearing my lawyer's voice on the phone today, and again, I have years of really deep experience with Thai culture, not from a tourist perspective. I've worked inside the Thai government. I have worked inside Buddhist monasteries. They're different. Even your experience inside hospitals, if you talk to people who are more like medical employees, they're conservative in different ways. They're members of the establishment in different ways, from a Buddhist monk, religious authority, from university professors. I have all this experience inside universities, and the universities can be extremely conservative places in Thailand. But, someone like that, whether it's the judge or the other people in that courtroom, in that bureaucratic context, the way they feel about it, how shocked they are, and how they regard Durian Ryder. They perceive him. I guess I'll give this is my interpretation. They can't say allegedly, but I think they perceive him as insane and dangerous and out of control, and they're right. And there's a sense in which everyone loses sight of that, whether the people who are laughing at him or the people who are laughing with him, people who are making excuses for him or people who got fed up with the excuse a long time ago, people who regard him as lying all the time, or people who actually believe what he says, or people who regard what he says as a mix of truth and fiction. There really has been a boiling frog scenario. And it was just funny for me today, because hearing my lawyer's voice on the phone, and he's talked to judges more than once already in this procedure, these proceedings. The depth of that sense of just shock, I can't say outrage, but the sense of, this person is a danger to the public. And they're right. He's proven that. I'm not the only case. I'm not the only instance. This is somebody who's doing dangerous and harmful things again and again. And, we forget that. And the sense in which I forgot that was up until today. So again, in parallel to the British Crown Prosecution Service, I was afraid because so every time a case is presented to Crown Prosecution Service in England, in the British system, which again in some ways on the surface the Thai system resembles the British system, if they're presented with a case, they have to make a decision. They make a series of decisions, but one of their most important decisions is whether or not bringing the case to trial serves the public interest. And this is a very British thing because it's completely non-democratic, completely non-transparent, no public accountability. But in many cases, especially when something very bizarre and conflicted happens, sometimes there are cases of murder that are in the newspapers, but it's a murder where someone was attempting to prevent another murder. There was some really complex set of circumstances. And the Crown just decides not to bring the case to trial. They just say, no, it's not in the public interest to bring it to trial. And I just mentioned, I think the public, they mostly notice this. The press, like the newspapers, they notice this happen when it's some very strange set of circumstances. Because people are interested. Oh, well, who's responsible? Who's guilty? They'd like to see it go to trial. But the Crown just decides, no, it doesn't serve the public interest. So before I talked to my lawyer today, I was actually concerned that the Crown, the Prosecution Service in Thailand, I don't know if they use that term, but that the prosecution would decide that this case was not worth pressing. And again, I mean, there's so many ways in which, I keep using this idea of the boiling frog, but in some ways, Thai society is very libertine and very permissive. In some ways, it is very indulgent towards its tourists, towards foreigners who go there and get drunk and misbehave. They're famous for that. They tolerate a lot of drunken misbehavior on the part of foreign tourists. And, even I, with my years of deep experience with the Thai establishment, you forget that tremendously conservative Theravada Buddhist Orthodox establishment that's there all the time and that is ruling the country and that takes very seriously their obligation to do justice. It's no joke. I mean, it's funny because, again, this brings back, they're not repressed memories, but it's just memories of a whole career I had as a scholar in that part of the world. That makes me sad to think about, so I don't think about it very often. But, I mean, like in Thailand, to give you a sense of what that subculture is like, the same way in the United States, there's a family surrounding George Bush, the George Bush clan family, what have you. There are these conservative families that are, really the strength of the government. And I mean, they'll be members of a Buddhist temple that only performs funeral ceremonies for people who've done Navy service. And they will put their sons into the Navy for a few years, and the sons will go to Naval Academy. Or in other cases, it'll be the Army, the Army on land, or the Air Force, or the police service. And their sons will do a couple years in the Navy and maybe get some education, the Military Academy or Naval Academy. And their sons will do some period of time as a Buddhist monk, most likely serving in a temple that's linked to that same temple. And they will go into some kind of bureaucratic or legal career. There is, we use this word, there is the establishment in Thailand. It's very politically complex and nuanced, of course. There are different allegiances and alliances. And I mean, even the fact that you can be in a town where there really is like, oh yeah, that's the Buddhist monastery that's linked to the Navy, and that's the Buddhist monastery that's linked to the police or the army or maybe both, whatever. Those types of unspoken distinctions. And most of the time, those different institutions don't get along. The army don't get along with the police, and the police don't get along with the army, and the Navy and the land army are, supporting different factions politically, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff is going on below the surface. But apart from the politics of the day, there's also the politics of the millennium. Politics stretching back centuries of these people who really take their moral duty, their ethical obligations very seriously, and who come out of that hardcore Theravada Buddhist background that I understand so well. I'm one of the few white men who can really say I have some appreciation for that, some appreciation for what it means. Obviously there's the actual ritual elements of being a Buddhist monk, and even though of course the religion is corrupt, but on that sentimental level of your grandfather dies and you become a Buddhist monk for 2 weeks during the grieving period. You have a respected elder who dies, And once a month, you go to visit the wall their remains are put in. It's a concrete wall that's human remains, and you go to show your respect to this deceased. There are so many elements to that conservative culture, and it's there all the time. And tourists don't see it because they don't want to see it. But the same I could say to some extent is true of like Florida. I mean, do you really feel how conservative Florida is as a state? And who is the Florida establishment? Who runs the police? Who runs the courts? Who are the lawyers and the politicians? Who is the establishment in Florida? Who are those families, the equivalent to the George Bush family in Florida? Although actually, some of George Bush's family members are living in Florida, and they are part of the Florida establishment. Now that I think about it, Florida includes George Bush's family. But anyway, if you go to Disneyland or you go to Miami and you go to nightclubs in Miami, you don't see that conservative establishment in Florida. But it's there. Today, again, I stopped thinking about it because it's, for me personally, it's sad. It reminds me of my years being involved with charity work there and trying to be more involved, being involved with Buddhist scholarship and trying to be more involved. All those dreams that have died for me are linked to that understanding I had of that culture in that context. And, there's another sense, even the work I did professionally, and, day-to-day reality of living in Bangkok. I have lived in Bangkok in the past. I have lived in Chiang Mai in the past. I have lived in Laos, blah, blah, blah. You guys know I have experience in the area. But, I was getting mad at my lawyer a few days ago because, he would send me an email saying, oh, yeah, okay, I'll send you another email about that tomorrow. In Thailand, as a language, as a culture, tomorrow doesn't really mean tomorrow. So 4 days go by, and I'm sending the guy furious emails saying, look, you you said you would have this done by tomorrow. And, that's Thailand. Really, that's Thailand. Really, with Thailand, tomorrow doesn't mean tomorrow. It was a saying in the Lao language. They're very close languages, but Mua dai jiao mi wei la. Of course, now my pronunciation is getting sloppier and sloppier. So many years have gone by since that was an important language in my life. But I would say to people, okay, do it when you have time. Mua dai jiao mi wei la. When you have enough time to do it. So, you go to a tailor, you go to some other shop to order something to be done, you're going to come back and pick it up. It's okay, do it when you have time. And you'd say, okay, I'll come back on Saturday or something. And you come back and they wouldn't have done anything. They wouldn't have even started doing it or something, And I learned, because it was not in my nature to be like this, but, people who live there their whole lives, friends of mine who were born and raised there, they really had to explain, no. When you want something done, you never say, do it when you have time, or I can come back Saturday. You say, why isn't it finished already? And you be a jerk about it every time. And it'll still be late, and they'll still tell you tomorrow, and tomorrow doesn't really mean tomorrow. Tomorrow means 2 weeks from now. So, on a deep level, Thailand and Laos, in some ways they're different cultures, but in some ways they're profoundly similar cultures. The link between them is ancient and ongoing. These two cultures. So, I'm reminded of those elements in dealing with a lawyer. I'm reminded of what the attitude and perspective of the Thai establishment is. And I'm most of all, I've just been given a wake-up call with the extent to which all of us, we've just gotten used to such a high level of those two things, violence and defamation. And they're both totally unacceptable within veganism. Now, if we were talking about football, the sport of football, maybe some level of violence and defamation is acceptable, and then above that, it's not acceptable. If we were talking about the sport of wrestling or boxing, there are some elements in our culture where people insult each other and they defame each other, and there's some violence. I don't know. That's a different question. But within veganism, as a political movement, as an ecological movement, as an animal rights movement, zero. This is totally unacceptable. And the reaction I've gotten just now, from the lawyer and indirectly from that whole courtroom, just, what I feel coming back from the procedures we've already had, it really reminds me of that. And we really can't lose sight of that, short term or long term. This is all about drawing that line where you say this is acceptable and this is unacceptable. But emotionally, for the reasons I talked about at the beginning of this monologue, emotionally, because I've seen those prisons, because I had that interest in those prisons, there still is a sense on a deep level in which I feel like I don't, I feel like I'd be happy for the guy if he doesn't go to prison. But this is so serious. It's not a joking matter. And after the last court hearing, my judge confirmed for me that from the prosecution's perspective, this is serious enough that even if he leaves Thailand, they are going to refer the arrest warrant. They're going to the authorities in Australia. So I was also concerned about that earlier. I do not know the minimum, or I think that's only for cases where the sentence is over a certain length of time. I do not know if that's 2 years or what, but where the charges are serious enough and the sentence is long enough that even if the person flees the country, the paperwork will be handed on to the government of Australia. So that also I was uncertain about earlier. Would the Crown Prosecution Service, or whatever they call it there, the National Prosecution, would they take these charges seriously enough to pursue them, even if he flees to Australia before this process is done on paper? And the answer is yes. So I had that confirmed for me today, or I guess confirmed again, because I had my doubts about that, because I didn't forget. I wasn't thinking about who those people are. I wasn't thinking about their cultural perspective. The type of person who becomes a career bureaucrat, a lawyer, a judge, a member of the establishment town, that conservative core that sees it as their duty to actually serve the public interest, to actually keep the peace, and to actually punish people who are insane or dangerous or who do harm to others on the kingdom soil, and who take that duty seriously. I know who those people are. I know them, and you can see them in Buddhist temples, and you can see them on university campuses, and you can meet them, whatever. I met them when I was working for the government myself in Thailand. I met those people, and I saw, there are many sad elements of the lives those people lead as Thailand goes through the vicissitudes of one revolution after another, one coup d'etat after another, one experimental attempt at democracy after another. There are many sad elements to that. And I've seen so many governments rise and fall in Thailand, I can't keep count. But yeah, I lost sight of that myself. So, sorry, for me that's something moving and something real. And it's nice for me to hear that, those are the people who are in my corner. And they're not in my corner because they know me or like me. They're in my corner because, again, just even one video from Durian Rider, they look at just one video like that, and they take very seriously that this is somebody the law needs to handle. Ooh. So look, guys, it is not in my interest to make public any of the other details of this court case. Those of you who have been following within Patreon for a long time know that. It is not in my interest to educate Durian Rider or anyone else about exactly what the charges are or exactly what happens where, But all of us are learning that we do not understand the Thai legal system as well as we think we do. And it has been hilarious to me to see everyone pretending they're experts on the law in general, and then pretending they're experts on the law within Thailand specifically. It's just a joke, and most of these people have never even been to Thailand, but they've never thought about it. They've never given serious consideration to what the situation is or what's going on. But for me, both in terms of the formal legal process and in terms of the informal cultural expectations behind that process and how it works, I'm learning so much. So like the September 6th court date, from my perspective, I thought, okay, so that means my lawyer has all the paperwork done, and then he goes to that hearing, and that's the end of that's the conclusive point at which all the papers are submitted to the judge. And no, again, this is partly cultural, not just the explicit legal organization of things. He goes to that court date, and he talks to the judge, and the judge gives him a checklist of things to do, and they have a conversation about how the evidence needs to be prepared. It seems like a very helpful and collegial process, but that's not what I was expecting. I thought that was the kind of end point where my lawyer would present the papers to the judge, and either the papers would be good enough to proceed or they would not be. We would get a yes or no answer. But no, it's obviously much more of a ongoing nuanced process where the judge was basically advising my lawyer as to what requirements were, what needed to be done, what would be helpful to the case, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I mean, none of us understand the legal process as well as we think we do. I think even my lawyer doesn't understand the legal process as well as he thinks he does. And, my lawyer has told me that it will be absolutely necessary for me to go to court in person as a witness and as a victim and to testify and to swear. And I did not know that until a couple days ago. And today he confirmed that. He said, no, you have to. This is obligatory for you. And I know some of you guys think I'm wealthy, but I'm really not. The only way I can afford to do that is from the money given on Patreon. Because the money donated for the legal cause, the money donated through generosity.com, the money donated through Generosity, it has all been spent. 100% of that went to cover the lawyer's fees. And in fact, I'm on the hook to pay more money to the lawyer in future. I hope the supplemental fees do not add up to too much. But this could indeed end up costing me more, or considerably more, than what I raised. And some of you guys know that. It's just stupid. In the past, people were always complaining, I didn't ask for enough money. It's impossible for it to cost so little. Again, I did that moral principle. I just wanted to raise exactly the amount of money that I needed to pay the lawyer, period. And other, people used to say the case must be fake because it was too cheap. And, now people say the opposite. Now people say it's so much money that I must have stolen it because it's more than... It's just stupid. No matter what you do with these people, and people say, why don't I post more documents online or something? It doesn't matter. If I post documents, people say the documents are fake. You've got to understand what the game is here. This is about someone who has been accused of a serious crime. And again, we do lose sight of that. We do forget that. And he is willing to lie in his own defense. Understandable. And he is willing to lie to continue defaming and harassing me and threatening me. So when you know that, and when you know this guy's track record of lying about everything, including just lying about things I can't believe anyone lies about. People are now lying about whether or not I ever went to university. It's like, if I'd never gone to university, I'd be proud of it. I'd talk about that. But anyway, stupid. I mean, I know when people lie saying I used to work for the CIA or whatever, yeah, right, CIA program to do original research on Buddhist philosophy, right? Yeah, I wish. So sign me up for that program, So that's it, guys. I mean, that's the update, and it is mostly a sentimental update rather than a factual update. But as you guys know, I do like to record videos that I might want to watch myself 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So trying to share the way I feel and the thoughts, that I'm swimming in at this peculiar juncture in the case. That's at least something valuable to me right now. And maybe it's valuable and worthwhile to some of you. Maybe not.